the effort was the only thing then. I'm not aware of anything else but that at that time. Now, in peacetime or something, I imagine it's a wholly,
After Point Blank and The Dirty Dozen, Lee Marvin wasn't just another Hollywood name. He was a straight-up powerhouse with a stare that could freeze a whole room. His reputation ran deep through every studio hallway, and when Marvin stepped on set, even the boldest stars knew to tighten up real quick. But behind all that brotherhood Hollywood loved to brag about, things were way messier than anyone let on. Recently, a wild list dropped, one that spilled the tea on 7 actors Marvin couldn't stand for a single second through his entire career. And get this, these weren't just random co-stars. Nope, these were supposed to be his tightest friends, his so-called ride or dies. Instead, they were talking behind his back, stealing his shine and fighting him for every frame of camera time. Things got so bad that studio bosses had to quietly step in and make sure these guys never worked together again. Before we dive into this storm, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a sec and keeps all the Hollywood chaos coming your way. Because once these names start rolling out, trust me, you'll never see them the same again, and sitting right at the top of that list, none other than John Wayne. That's right, the Duke himself. Marvin couldn't stand him one bit. And the reason why? It's darker, colder, and way more real than any war flick either of them ever shot. It all kicked off during the filming of the Comancheros back in 1961. Wayne was in full press mode, puffing his chest and boasting about how he always tried to represent the American fighting spirit. But Marvin? He wasn't having any of it. He stepped right up to Wayne, cameras rolling, and snapped, "You didn't fight. Don't talk like you did." Boom. The whole room froze. Reporters just stood there, jaws on the floor, while Wayne's face turned pale. Here's the truth. Marvin actually served in the Pacific during World War II. He'd seen real combat, took real hits, and earned those scars for real. Meanwhile, Wayne spent those years making war movies from the comfort of a Hollywood backlot. Total opposite lives. Humiliated, Wayne walked off without a word, but that was just the beginning of the storm brewing between them. As time went on, the tension only got nastier behind the scenes. One day on set, Wayne tried to teach Marvin how to hold a rifle, but Marvin wasn't about to play student. He fired back loud enough for everyone to hear, "I learned mine at Saipan. Where were you?" The air went ice cold instantly. That line cut deep, straight to Wayne's pride. Marvin's lessons came from real war zones, not studio scripts. Crew members later said Wayne couldn't even look Marvin in the eye for the rest of the day. For Lee Marvin, John Wayne's non-stop flag-waving and long speeches about honor felt like a straight-up slap to every real soldier who'd actually shed blood for their country. Marvin had lived through the chaos of war, the noise, the fear, the loss. He'd earned his medals the hard way, one scar at a time. So hearing Wayne talk about patriotism from a comfy Hollywood chair, that made Marvin's blood boil like wildfire. Wayne might have played soldiers on the big screen, but Marvin was one. No pretending, no camera tricks, just raw experience burned into his soul. Their feud ran so deep that even after Wayne passed in 1979, Marvin's anger stayed frozen solid. When a reporter asked if he wanted to say a few kind words, Marvin didn't sugarcoat it. He shot back cold as ice. "I honor soldiers." He played one. Boom! That line hit like a bullet. Short, brutal, and final. But the storm didn't end there, because next on Marvin's hit list came another Hollywood heavyweight, Frank Sinatra. Sinatra, the swaggering superstar who strutted through Tinseltown like he owned every spotlight, drove Marvin absolutely nuts. Marvin didn't care about fame, money, or fancy parties. What got under his skin was ego, and Sinatra's off the charts. It all started with Sinatra's total lack of respect for anyone else on set. He'd roll in hours late, sunglasses on, acting like the world revolved around him. Crew members scrambled to keep him happy while he barked out orders like some kind of general. And Marvin, the man had seen real generals. He had zero patience for that Hollywood nonsense. One afternoon, Sinatra showed up late again, snapping at everyone in sight, and Marvin finally lost it. He stormed right up to Sinatra and said, "You think just because you show up, the world owes you everything?" The whole room went still. Nobody even breathed. But Sinatra, never one to back down, cracked that smug grin and fired back, "At least I don't scream my lines like I'm still in boot camp." Oof, the air turned electric. Every pair of eyes darted between them like a fight was about to break out right there on set. From that moment, their feud was locked in stone. Things only spiraled from there. During the Dirty Dozen, Sinatra was supposed to join the cast, but bailed at the last minute, blaming scheduling conflicts. Yeah, right. Marvin didn't buy that excuse for a second. Behind closed doors, he told people, he didn't quit because he was busy. He quit because he couldn't handle being part of a team. That line tore through Hollywood gossip circles like wildfire. Sinatra's reputation as a control freak clashed hard with Marvin's tough, no-nonsense work ethic. For Marvin, every movie was like a mission. You show up, give respect, and do the job right. No whining, no diva acts. Sinatra, on the other hand, treated every project like another stage for his ego, another chance to show off his star power. But Marvin wasn't the kind of man to sit quiet while someone dragged his name through the mud. No way. One wild night in Beverly Hills, fate threw Marvin and Sinatra into the same bar, and sparks nearly flew. Witnesses said Sinatra was holding court with his Rat Pack buddies, tossing back drinks and laughing about tough guys who think war stories make them real men. That hit Marvin like a slap across the face. Without saying a word, he slammed his glass down so hard it nearly shattered, then marched straight up to Sinatra. He locked eyes with him and said, "You talk a big game, but when things get rough, you send someone else to fight your battles." The whole bar went dead silent. Nobody dared move a muscle. You could practically feel the tension buzzing through the room like static before a lightning strike. You could practically see the tension in the air, thick like smoke after an explosion. Sinatra's crew jumped in quick before fists started flying, but the damage was already done. From that night on, their hatred was locked in stone. Marvin made it crystal clear he wouldn't touch a project if Sinatra's name showed up anywhere on the cast list. That was it. No more second chances, no more fake smiles. Insiders later spilled that Marvin's beef with Sinatra ran way deeper than just ego clashes. He didn't just despise Sinatra's arrogance. He saw him as the living symbol of everything broken about Hollywood's elite. Untouchable, pampered, and totally out of touch with the real world. Meanwhile, Sinatra couldn't stand Marvin's no-nonsense, straight-shooting, military-style toughness. One night, he even sneered to some friends, calling Marvin a walking hangover in combat boots. That jab spread through town faster than gossip at a rap party, turning their feud into full-blown Hollywood legend. But Marvin, he never backed down, not even an inch. He told crew members straight up, Sinatra's scared of real men. That's why he couldn't handle being in the same scene with us. Boom! That line thundered through studio hallways and hit every gossip column in the city. People couldn't believe how bold he was, but Marvin didn't care. He meant every single word with his whole chest. When Sinatra eventually passed away, reporters rushed to Marvin expecting some polite Hollywood tribute. But Marvin wasn't built for sugarcoating. He just shrugged and said coldly, Sinatra was the guy who thought the world owed him a round of applause just for walking into a room. That's not the kind of man I respect. Brutal? Absolutely. But that was classic Lee Marvin, raw, honest, and completely unapologetic. For him, this wasn't just another celebrity feud. It was a full-on clash of worlds. Marvin couldn't stand fake charm, inflated egos, and Hollywood entitlement. He believed respect had to be earned, not handed out because someone could croon a few notes or flash a pretty smile. Sinatra, on the other hand, couldn't wrap his head around why Marvin refused to play the fame game or bow down like everyone else. Their hatred wasn't about envy. It was pure, unfiltered contempt from both sides. But if Sinatra lit Marvin's fire, then Charles Bronson sparked something entirely different, deep, grinding frustration. To Marvin, Bronson wasn't your typical tough guy. He was like a block of ice, cold, distant, and impossible to read. There was something hollow about him, like he'd buried his emotions behind steel walls and thrown away the key. Marvin, who thrived on energy and raw emotion, couldn't stand that kind of silence. Their tension hit boiling point during the Magnificent Seven. Both men were cast as rugged gunslingers, but their acting styles couldn't have clashed harder if they tried. Marvin brought heat and attitude, cracking jokes between takes, shouting lines with fire, and lighting up every scene like he owned it. Bronson, though, he stayed quiet and detached, barely spoke a word, even when the cameras weren't rolling. He'd just sit off to the side, calm, cold, and completely unbothered, like all the chaos around him didn't even exist. Before long, people on set started whispering, wondering if Bronson even cared about the movie at all. And to Marvin, that kind of indifference was unforgivable. One scorching afternoon, after a long and painfully silent shoot, Lee Marvin finally cracked. He turned to a fellow actor, eyes blazing with frustration, and muttered, "It's like working with a wall, and the wall's got more personality." The crew tried to stifle their laughter, but deep down, they knew exactly what he meant. Everyone on set could feel the icy tension that Charles Bronson dragged into every scene. The air practically froze the moment he walked in. But Bronson's silence wasn't just a shy quirk. It was a full-on barrier that nobody could break. Marvin, who thrived on noise, fire, and real human energy, couldn't stand that emotional lockdown. He lived for camaraderie, the wild, electric back and forth between actors that made scenes explode with life. But with Bronson, it was like staring at a stone statue. No spark, no heartbeat, just that cold, blank glare that drained the room dry. The tension didn't stay secret for long. Crew members began whispering about how bad things were getting, and soon Marvin's frustration started slipping out in snarky little comments. He'd mutter jokes under his breath, mocking Bronson's stiff expressions and dead-eyed stares. In one interview, Marvin couldn't help but take a jab, saying, "Bronson's great in a fight scene, but if I had to go to war, I'd pick someone who actually talks to me." Ouch. That one line summed it up perfectly. Their feud wasn't just about acting styles. It was about pride, passion, and raw personality. For Marvin, respect was everything. Acting wasn't just reading lines off a page. It was about connection, trust, and that unspoken rhythm that made a story real. So when Bronson shut himself off from everyone, Marvin didn't see a quiet professional. He saw someone selfish, someone breaking the golden rule of teamwork. To Marvin, every scene was a battle, something you fought side by side, not alone. And Bronson's frozen attitude, it betrayed everything Marvin believed in. But the next man on Marvin's list, he made Bronson look like a saint. Robert Mitchum, the so-called lazy legend of Hollywood, managed to crawl under Marvin's skin faster than anyone else. If there was one thing Marvin couldn't stand, it was someone who treated the set like a playground, and Mitchum did exactly that. From day one, things were bad. Mitchum strolled onto set like he'd just rolled out of bed, half awake, half drunk, and fully uninterested. He had that lazy grin plastered on his face, script barely touched, acting like the rules didn't apply to him at all. And to Marvin, who lived on discipline, focus, and intensity. That was pure, unfiltered disrespect. Their big showdown came during a late-night shoot in the early 60s. Mitchum showed up late again, reeking of bourbon, eyes half open, missing his cues like he couldn't care less. Marvin stood there, fists clenched, watching the same scene crumble once, twice, 3 times, until he finally lost it. He stormed across the set, voice booming so loud it echoed off the walls, and shouted, "You planning to act tonight, or sleep through the whole damn film?" The crew froze in total shock, waiting for the blow-up to turn physical. But Mitchum? Not even a flinch. He just leaned back, gave that trademark lazy smirk, and fired back, "Relax, kid, the camera loves me either way." That smug line hit Marvin like a punch straight to the gut. The grin, the arrogance, the total lack of effort. It was everything Marvin hated about Hollywood wrapped up in one smirk. Lee Marvin's fuse was lit, and everyone on set could feel it. The tension was so thick it was like watching a bomb tick down before it blew. It wasn't just Robert Mitchum's arrogance that drove Marvin up the wall. It was the fact that Mitchum meant every single word of it. Mitchum had that effortless charm, that lazy, cool swagger that made him look like a movie god even when he barely lifted a finger. And that burned Marvin alive inside. Marvin believed greatness came from sweat, discipline, and straight-up hard work, not from strolling onto set half awake and letting the camera do all the magic. Crew members saw it day after day. Mitchum leaning against a wall, cigarette dangling from his lips, half-focused, while Marvin paced back and forth like a soldier ready for battle. Marvin poured every ounce of energy into every take, every line, every second. So watching Mitchum glide through a performance without even trying, that was like a slap right across Marvin's face. To him, Mitchum's laziness wasn't just unprofessional, it was pure disrespect. And when Marvin felt disrespected, he didn't hold back. He exploded. The final straw came one night at a packed Hollywood party filled with producers, directors, and big-name stars. Marvin was already simmering, drink in hand, when he spotted Mitchum across the room, looking as smug as ever. That was it. Marvin marched right over, locked eyes with him, and growled, "Your whole career looks like you're sleepwalking." The crowd gasped, dead silence. But Mitchum, cool as ice. He didn't even blink. He just smirked and fired back, "At least I don't bark every line like I'm back in boot camp." The entire room froze solid. Every head turned as the two men stared each other down, tension so sharp you could slice it with a knife. Within a week, all of Hollywood was buzzing about the showdown, the ultimate clash between Marvin's fiery discipline and Mitchum's effortless cool. One thing was clear after that night. Lee Marvin and Robert Mitchum would never share a frame, a drink, or even a civil word again. Their rivalry became the stuff of Hollywood legend, one built on pride, passion, and two egos too big to fit in the same room. But just when you thought Marvin's temper had cooled off, another name walked straight into his line of fire: Yul Brynner, the self-proclaimed king of Hollywood. And if there was one thing Marvin couldn't stomach, it was fake arrogance disguised as confidence. Brynner oozed it from every pore, polished, proud, and way too full of himself. He was so obsessed with control and image that working with him felt like standing next to a statue carved out of pure ego. Their tension started brewing back in 1960 during the filming of The Magnificent Seven. Brynner was already riding high on fame, known for his regal, commanding roles. But he didn't just play kings. He acted like one off camera, too. He strutted around, set like it was his personal palace, barking orders, demanding attention, and expecting everyone else to orbit around him. But Marvin? He wasn't built to bow to anybody. He believed in grit, sweat, and realness, not crowns and egos. He saw straight through Brynner's smooth exterior and called it like he saw it. To Marvin, Brynner's obsession with control wasn't confidence. It was insecurity hiding behind a gold-plated smile. Yul Brynner wasn't just hard to work with. He was impossible. The man wanted control over everything. He demanded script rewrites, tried sneaking in extra lines to make himself sound tougher, smarter, more heroic, anything to keep the spotlight on him. And that kind of power play, it didn't sit right with Marvin one bit. The stage was set for another explosive Hollywood feud, and once Marvin decided he'd had enough, there was no turning back. And Lee Marvin, he wasn't putting up with another second of it. After yet another argument over Yul Brynner's self-centered, kingly dialogue, Marvin finally hit his breaking point. He glared right at Brynner and said, "You're not the king of this set, Yul. You're just a guy with a big ego and a bald head." The crew froze in place, not a single breath, not a whisper, because everyone knew when Marvin called someone out, he meant every word. But Brynner wasn't the type to swallow an insult like that quietly. Nope. He decided to fight back in his own sneaky way by taking control of something petty, the lighting. Brynner started demanding that every spotlight hit him just right, wasting hours while the crew adjusted angles to flatter his face. To him, every shadow was an artistic statement, but to Marvin, it was a complete joke. Finally, after watching another endless lighting setup drag on, Marvin's patience exploded. He shouted across the stage, "You're not acting, you're just waiting for the spotlight to hit you right." The words cracked through the soundstage like gunfire. You could feel the sting in the air, the truth hitting hard. For Marvin, that moment said it all. Brynner's obsession with lighting wasn't about the craft. It was about vanity. It wasn't about improving the movie. It was about feeding his own ego. To Marvin, that was the worst kind of Hollywood behavior, fake, self-absorbed, and hollow to the core. On the flip side, Brynner saw Marvin's outburst as a personal attack. He started calling Marvin unprofessional behind closed doors, trying to turn the studios against him. But the damage was done. The line had been crossed and there was no coming back from it. From that day on, the two men couldn't stand to even be in the same room. Their feud ran so deep that when Brynner's name came up for future projects, Marvin shut it down instantly. He told producers flat out, "If Yul's in, I'm out." And just like that, another legendary Hollywood rivalry was born. These weren't just little creative disagreements. They were full-blown wars of pride, ego, and power. From John Wayne's fake patriotism to Sinatra's overblown arrogance, from Bronson's ice-cold silence to Mitchum's lazy charm, and finally Brynner's obsession with control. Lee Marvin clashed with some of the biggest names in the game, and he never backed down. He didn't care about fame, politics, or who had more awards on their shelf. What mattered to him was authenticity, respect, and honesty, even if it meant setting bridges on fire along the way. That's what made Lee Marvin stand out in a town built on smoke and mirrors. He was brutally real in a world that thrived on make-believe. So now it's your turn. Whose name on Lee Marvin's infamous hate list shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and tell us which feud left your jaw on the floor. Don't forget to smash that like, share, and subscribe button to keep the untold Hollywood chaos coming. The scandals, the rivalries, and the secrets the studios never wanted you to know. See you in the next video.